Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 169 of Album of the Day, in which, of course, before I get into the review, some of you, if you watched my previous review, you may remember I was just now, preparing for, school, a junior year in Arundel High School and stuff. So I'm back in school and things are going pretty well, and I'm still gonna do reviews and stuff like I usually do on the weekends and stuff. But anyway, let's just get to the review. So today's artist, a duo based out of New York, sort of a underground experimental indie rock kind of duo. Been around since like 2014, because that's when they released their debut album. And this is a band that I haven't heard too many people on the internet really talk about, so I definitely felt like they definitely deserved some love and a little more attention here. I'm talking about the group known as Eaters, and they are signed to Andrew Savage's label, Dual Tools. So that's actually how I discovered this group, because of Andrew Savage, one of the co-founders and frontmen of the band Parquet Courts out of New York, who actually sent me a bunch of stuff from his Dual Tools label, because he took notice of my review and of the latest Parquet Courts record, Human Performance, and stuff like that, which I thought was cool. And this is one he just sent to me as a standalone vinyl back in May, which is when this was released. So I'm here to review Eaters' latest record, which is their sophomore album, and it is self-titled, a lot like their debut album. So some people may call this Eaters 2017, because their first record was also self-titled. And definitely a great record that I definitely wanted to review sometime. It was my number 16 for my favorite records of 2017 so far. And anyway, there's the cover, which I love this album cover. Really cool sculpture on there, which apparently a guy named Christopher Duffy does all the sculptures and artwork for the band's music. The spine in the back, and some more cool artwork. And there's 9 songs on this record, and it's over 42 minutes long. So kind of short, pretty much. And of course, it's got this really cool sleeve. It's got all the lyrics and stuff like that. Another really cool piece of artwork right there. And then there's the liner notes, which the duo consists of singer-songwriters and producers Bob Jones and Jonathan Schneck. And then there's the vinyl, which there's side A, and then there's side B. And there was a download card in this, but I did already use it, which is cool because now I have the record on my iTunes and stuff, and I can put it on my iPod and whatnot, since I barely listen to vinyl all the time, since I have to be at home in order to listen to it. So download cards are always nice little convenience for you there. So that's the artwork for the new self-titled album from Eaters. When you listen to this record, you will definitely see how this band definitely has a very unique sound and a very interesting kind of melding and marriage of styles, ranging from experimental and dance music to krautrock, as well as a little post-punk in there as well. But then also elements of other kinds of music, Uh, but then occasional little like elements of like goth and whatnot. So like if you're into like Nine Inch Nails or something like that, like I definitely do hear a bit of Trent Reznor influence going on the vocals. Who's like one vocalist kind of reminds me somewhat of like Trent Reznor's voice, while the other one kind of reminds me more of like kind of a sweet, wistful indie rock voice, like say Ben Gibbard of Def Cab for Cutie or something like that. I really like the opening track on this record, Embrace the Strange, which starts out with this sort of programmed sequence robotic drum beat, as well as a very like kind of driving, groovy synth bass line, which is line, and it's led by like some kind of punky guitars and really cool keyboards and boards and stuff, and definitely very cool, the layers of instrumentation going on in this track, and it definitely has a hookiness about it that would definitely be enough to sort of pull you in, which I really do like a lot. And the lyrics on here, as well as the very like kind of catchy lyrics on this song. This song, where the narrator of the song, if you listen to the lyrics, seems to be kind of like introspective and kind of in this state of kind of neurotic anxiety, pretty much. It definitely has sort of a young sense of angst to it, but I think it's very interesting sort of point here, especially when he goes into that bridge where he's practically rapping the words of "Get down, sit down, lay down, stay down, cry out, breathe in, old friends creeping." It's just so hooky. And then following that is one of my favorite tracks on the record, No Secret, which definitely is probably one of the most unique sounding on the record. Very interesting textures to the beat, that's for sure. I like how nearly every song, when it comes to like the beats and stuff, definitely do have plenty of attention to detail and are very carefully crafted to make it seem like they're coming up with a new idea almost with every track on this record. And No Secret is definitely a perfect example. The kind of like the beat is definitely something like you can't really describe it. It goes something like boo bith boo boo bith boo boo bith boo, something like that. But they do also incorporate some acoustic drums really nicely. Like for example, the kind of lo-fi, scuzzy kind of like sort of drums that you're hearing like on the third verse of the song, and really cool guitar solo in the middle as well. And also, and I do want to mention the lyrics, and the lyrics definitely have a sense of like urgency to them. Not necessarily Shakespearean, but definitely at the same time enough to leave an impact with lines like, "It's just a fraction of time, a flash in the pan, etched deep in your mind, but soon to be over. The seconds pass, but the shadows remain." And the kind of Trent Reznor inspired, like kind of sort of deep vocals definitely do fit these lyrics, I think, really well. Then we have the song Empty Yourself, one of the weirder tracks on the record, featuring also some very interesting sounds, the kind of like haunting keyboards and piano on the track, as well as the kind of demonic synth bass leads kind of playing underneath of the song. It's sort of like electronic music, but played with sort of a punk rock sort of ethos. It's ethos, and it also does feature some really cool sort of robotic vocal manipulations that I thought were really cool, and sounds like something, and kind of sounds a little bit like kind of like Trent Reznor meets like Def Grips or something like that, with just how weird just how weird this track sounds. So this is where I kind of hear some of the gothic influence in this record, but definitely very cool on this track. And again, definitely some very catchy lyrics on here. Which again, lyrics that may be kind of nonsensical, but at the same time definitely have an interesting point, and they're still like coherent thoughts, which I like. And I especially really like the final verse. Where he really kind of gets to the point where at what he's saying, and also does throw in some pretty hilarious lyrics, sort of commenting on the world today, of like taking the world today, especially on lines like, "Accept the shit we're in, yeah, eat it with a grin." And then we have the song "The Grazing," one of the longer songs on the record, but definitely a song that definitely has some very interesting things going on. I like how it kind of progresses in terms of like the layers of like synths and beats and guitars and stuff. And this is the first song on the record to feature kind of co-lead vocals from both Bob Jones and Jonathan Schneck, and sort of blended with each other really nicely, pretty much. And this is one song where it's definitely like, I think this whole record overall is definitely one where the lyrics are really interesting, but I definitely do feel like what really draws me in is the way the instruments and the way the production is just so layered and just sounds so like futuristic and unique, which I definitely do really like. And this is definitely not the kind of thing that's for those like mainstream electronic fans just looking for something to just kind of bob heads to in the club. This is something that's definitely way more sort of refined and much more nuanced, and definitely do appreciate that. But I like how this song really like how it transitions from the kind of funky, bassy groove into like this more kind of sort of cathartic, sort of like almost kind of cinematic, like sort of rock sound, pretty much, featuring just these really cool like chord progressions with the guitar at the end, as well as kind of sort of flappy kick drum going on. In between this record, we get two very cool instrumental pieces, starting with the song Horizons, which is by far probably the most like beautiful sounding song on the record, and probably the closest that this record comes to like a ballad or something like that. I mean, just some very interesting notes played on the synth here, and it also does feature some other little instrumental detail, which is definitely very nice on there, like the conga drums, as well as the use of a bassoon, which is like kind of like bassy, and if you listen a little more carefully, and you'll probably hear this kind of bassy wind instrument, and that would be a bassoon, which I definitely do think it is really cool how, you can't really hear it at first, but if you dig a little deeper, you'll find something really just intriguing. And after this is the much more aggressive, ambitious, and 6-minute The Well, which is definitely one song that definitely is by far the longest song in the record, and very ambitious song length, but it still at the same time manages to keep you engaged in stuff, despite there not being a vocal or anything like that. But I like how this is the one song where there are no vocals, but the instrumentation really does the talking here. Getting here, sort of evoking different emotions, whether it be like anger or sadness or also like triumph as well. And I do like the kind of skittering electronic beats going on in the background. Definitely do drive the song really nicely, I think. As well as there's all these like really weird kind of sort of drony synth sounds hanging in the background as well, kind of adding a sense of dissonance to the track, which I do really like. The song "This Is Our Life." The song "This Is Our Life" is definitely another one that I definitely do really like as well, and definitely one of my favorite songs on the record. Lyrically, with some interesting little like one-liners going on this track about sort of wondering if this is really our life, with like life, because we know for sure, because we think we know for sure where our hearts surely lie, and about how lifetimes kind of flash before your eyes and stuff, and kind of leave you to kind of these little like wonderings of a momentary craze or a simple soiree or something like that. And instrumentally, I think the song definitely does sound really nice, and has by far one of the most sort of and has by far one of the most unique sounding like beats on the record as well. It's on the record as well as these other little cool instrumental things. Like there's one point where I'm hearing like these strange little like electronic sounds, which kind of sounds like a beat that was put together, then broken apart and stuff to make it sound really kind of off kilter and stuff, which I definitely do think sounds really nice on there. The song Blue Light is definitely another track on here that I definitely do think is one of my favorites, because it definitely, it's on here, it sounds like just kind of a long lost piece of like 80s inspired post-punk or new wave, whatever. I mean, fans of the Smiths, I think, can definitely, get into this track. It's definitely very beautiful, and like it definitely sounds very timeless as well. And I think it's interesting how after all these more experimental abstract pieces, you get back into some more poppy structured songs, which wasn't really seen since the first song on the record. And definitely by far the one on here that I think lyrically I relate to most. It's definitely a much more kind of, by far, probably one of the more melancholy tracks on the record. So it kind of makes sense that the voice that I described is more of kind of a sweet indie rock voice is the one singing over here, because this totally sounds like something maybe Ben Gibbard of Def Cab for Cutie could sing, pretty much. Could sing or something like that. And there's some kind of it does open up with some pretty dark lyrics, like somewhere between death and the dream on the JMZ. I tried imagining my bones picked clean, but definitely bringing up a pretty melancholy chorus by saying how like we're hungry and we're sleepless, and stuff like that. And definitely a very beautiful song instrumentally. Very pretty guitar stylings on the track, and also like the harmonies are fantastic. Like the harmonies in the chorus definitely do sound fantastic and stick. And I think the sequence drums definitely do drive the song really nicely also, while the synths add just a very good sort of ethereal, dreamy sort of atmosphere to the track. It's probably the closest this album goes to like sort of serene, like dream pop, and it's a nice little kind of sort of cool down after the more kind of aggressive sort of pieces for a majority of the record. The closing track on the record, Always Never, has this really unique sort of very interesting piano groove going on, as well as definitely a really cool like as well as really cool like sort of huge like almost arena rock inspired riff on the track, but at the same time definitely crisp and lo-fi, enough to kind of keep it from being too clean. Bit clean and this is a song where the lyrics once again not necessarily ones that are gonna like strike you right away, but still at the same time have sort of coherent thoughts to them that I definitely do really like a lot, and it does have a great like chorus to like close out the song. Even though I would say this is probably my least favorite track on the record, mostly because the kind of distorted filtering kind of towards the end kind of like gets louder to the point where it kind of tends to eat up the instrumental and kind of so it's kind of a drone thing that I don't necessarily care for that much, even though I do appreciate the fact they tried to make some sort of effect like you were being swallowed by it or something like that. By it just could have. I just wish it were done not so much in a way that it kind of swallows the chorus at the end. So yeah, this is definitely a great record overall, and definitely one that hasn't really got the credit that it really deserves yet. So that's kind of the whole reason I decided to review it, because I definitely do think it is by far one of my favorite like experimental albums that's come out this year. And like I said, whether you're into like experimental industrial and gothic music like Nine Inch Nails and stuff like that, or if you're into kind of the more abstract side of like new wave and post-punk and stuff, not seen since like I think if you're a Gary Newman fan, you might like this record. I think definitely whatever of those that you're into, definitely check this record out. And shout out to Andrew Savage for like his support and like sending me this record and all the other stuff from Dole 2 tolls that he sent me and whatnot. And I'm definitely going to give this record an 8 out of 10 because it's definitely just fantastic, and definitely some very unique sounds going on here. So that's my review of this new Eaters record. I'll see you for episode 170.